Congratulations, you're engaged. Now what? Today we're going to talk about the tips on how and when to start planning your wedding. If you're a procrastinator, now is not the time to exercise that magic talent that you have. You want to make sure that you don't want to overwhelm yourself, so start planning now. In this video, we're going to talk not only about how to plan your wedding, but when to plan your wedding to set yourself up for success and start off on the right foot. Today, I'm going to give you my top 4 tips on how to start your wedding planning, and stay tuned because the last one is the best. So the first tip is when to start planning your wedding. The answer is really simple. You want to start planning immediately. I've done weddings that have timelines that are 6 months, and we can definitely do it in 6 months. You're just going to have to be a hell of a lot more flexible. Ideally, you want to be looking at 12 to 18 months out to plan your wedding. That's going to give you the most options with venues, with vendors, and also to make sure that all of your A-list people and your B-list people are available to be at your wedding. People plan out. So the shorter the amount of time, the more stress you're going to have, the fewer options you're going to have. So take a deep breath and start planning. Now we're going to talk about point number 2, how to actually start your wedding planning. The first thing that you want to do is you and your partner need to get on the same page. You might say, oh, well, we already are on the same page. I can assure you, there are going to be things that you're going to uncover through this process that you may not even have been aware of yourself, things that you like, things that you don't like. And during this conversation, you're going to be able to uncover your things and your partner's things. Do you want the wedding to be big? Do you want it to be small? Do you want it to be in the mountains? Do you want, where do you want it to be? That's one example. But making sure that you're on the same page is going to make sure that you are a unified force when you go to talk to your family members, when you talk to your friends, and when you start searching online for different elements, the venues, the caterers, all of the different vendors. So after you've gotten on the same page, the next really important element is to get clear on your budget. And that actually is part of being on the same page because it's the financial aspect of being on the same page. So you want to really question, how much do you want to spend on this event, right? The sky's the limit. I can tell you, I've done weddings for $10,000. I've done weddings for $500,000. It doesn't matter how much money you're spending. You want to make sure that you have a clear budget and you've broken that budget down. So you've got clear expectations about how much to spend in each of the various categories. Selecting your date would be the next point I want to talk about. Everyone uses the day, oh, when are you getting married? When are you getting married? And that's a really valid question. So a lot of times when couples first get engaged, they want to choose a date immediately. And that's not really the best strategy. You want to first get on the same page as we talked about, determine your budget, and then start looking at dates. Do not have a hard date to start off with. You're going to want to talk to key family members and key friends to make sure that they're available for this target date. Then the next step you're going to want to do is start looking for venues. Once you've established your venue and you've signed the contract for your venue, then you have an actual date that you can build everything else off from. Now that you have your target date selected, you're going to want to have a conversation with the key players. Key players are family members, close friends, people that are going to play in a very important role in the wedding itself. We want to make sure that they are available. They may not always be. You may not know about a graduation or a retirement party or anything that may not be on your calendar or on your mind that they need to be aware of. So you want to plan around those dates. So again, it's a target date, but it's also flexible until you've had those conversations. Another factor in choosing a final wedding date is based on your vendor or venue availability. So at this point, you want to go in and prioritize what's the most important thing to you. Is it the venue? Is it the location? Or is it your specific photographer or a caterer? So if you have your caterer as your number one important vendor, you're going to want to contact your caterer and find out when they're available. If they're totally open, great. But if they're not, you may want to shift your date, and that could drive finding a different date for the venue. If the venue is the most important, which typically for most people it is, that's the first thing you're going to determine and start doing research on and finding a date that works based on your target date. So if you're like a typical couple, the venue is going to be really important, as I mentioned. And the best way to start determining the venues that you want to look at is to jump online. Literally start looking at the different venues in whatever location you want to do and see what the availability is, but also make sure that the venue fits into your budget. So you're always going to touch back to the first point, which is your budget. Then you choose your venue. Once you have your venue locked in, after reviewing the contracts and doing a site inspection and doing all of that, then you lock in the contract, then you have your official wedding date selected. That's when you can start doing save the dates. You can do all that, talking to friends, friends and saying, this is when we're getting married. So you'll have an answer to that big question. What's the date? So part number 3, we're going to talk about setting priorities and managing expectations. The biggest thing is money. The first thing I want you to do is, for the two of you, as part of getting on the same page, discuss what part of the wedding is most important to each of you. So why that's important is because you're going to want to allocate specific funds to those sections that are important to you. For example, if one of you is really into floral design, you're going to want to put more money into that. If you're really into food and beverage, you're going to want to more focus on that. So you choosing these things now give you a way and give you a roadmap to determining how much money you want to allocate to each section of the wedding experience. So let's move on to managing expectations. The first expectations you want to manage is between the two of you. The two of you need to come to an agreement on who's going to do what, and also how you're going to establish your communication. I recommend choosing a specific platform, Google Doc, Evernote, Slack, Trello, whatever you want to use to be able to communicate with each other on the go. Once something has been completed or a choice that you have to make, that will make sure that the two of you are completely on the same page. You're also going to want to choose your roles. Are you going to do this 50-50 equally? Or are you going, one person going to be the A person and the other person going to be the B person? That's just a part of the discussion you have right now. One element that you want to take into account is outside of wedding, because you do have a life outside of wedding planning, even though it feels like it will take over your life until the wedding day. You do want to make sure that you're considering your other responsibilities in life. If one of you works part-time and one of you is a physician, well, guess what? The part-time person is probably going to take the lead on this situation. Now, this is also an opportunity when you are if you're both professionals, for example, and you start looking deeper into this and you're realizing, oh wow, this is going to take a hell of a lot more time than we first thought. This may be the time when you want to consider hiring a professional wedding planner to take over and manage this entire process for you. So that takes us back to the budget. You're then going to have to adjust your priorities with your budget because you're choosing to hire a wedding planner or DIY it. And that's what we're talking about here today. So to continue on expectations, the next most important people are your parental units. Some of us have 2, some of us have 4, some of us have 6, some of us have 8. So you're going to want to talk to all of them, right? And you're really going to want to get clear, especially if they're going to be contributing financially. The minute someone contributes financially, they may or may not have expectations about the wedding itself. Sometimes I've seen mothers of the bride who have gotten really into the whole planning process to the point of like not a bridezilla, but like a momzilla. And so you want to understand what the mom's expectation is, or the dad, or whoever that person is. You want to understand how they want to be engaged in this process, how they want to be enrolled. Sometimes they want to take over the whole thing. And if you're okay with that, that's totally fine. Let them do their wedding. They didn't end up having a wedding they wanted, so they get to, by proxy, get to have the wedding they wanted for you. And that could be a good thing. But you want to be really, really clear about that from the get-go. So after you've had the conversation with the parental units and you've determined if they're going to be financially contributing to this event, then the two of you as the couple need to sit down and decide, do we want to accept that money? That might sound crazy because you're like, hey, it's free money, we're going to do it. But it's not always the right move, especially with a super controlling parent that has expectations of adding to your guest list and wants it black tie when you want it to be on the beach and with no shoes on. You really want to be clear and very graciously accept or decline the offer of them giving you money. After you've had the conversation with your parents, what are you going to do? You two need to come together and get super clear as to what your parental roles are going to be as far as their contribution. If they're going to be offering you money, discuss the strings that come with that. Is it going to change the size? Is it going to change the scope? Is it going to change the guest list, the people that are there? Will the vibe change if your parents are giving you money? If they're not giving you money, well, then you don't have to consider them really. But if they are, get super clear with them about what their expectations are and then decide if that's going to work for you or not. If it is going to work for you, awesome. You've just gotten some extra money to do your wedding. If not, it's totally fine. Have that conversation with them. Be clear, be gracious, be grateful, but be honest. That's really what you want to do. This is ultimately about your wedding day. My fourth tip is delegating tasks and seeking support. So many brides that I've worked with, and grooms for that matter, make the big mistake of taking on too much themselves. This is especially true with A-type personality people. They always have specific dreams and fantasies, and they want what they want, which is totally understandable. But remember, your wedding is one day in your life. You've got to be able to engage other people in this process, or you're going to be completely overwhelmed. There's an entire wedding planning industry for a reason. So if you're DIYing this wedding, you want to make sure that you've got friends and family that you can count on and that you can delegate to. Oops, I scratched my nose. So in this case, I want you to look at yourself as a project manager, not the worker bee. So once you've established who your key players are, you're really going to want to get clear about their responsibilities and making sure they can take those responsibilities on. The first thing to do at this point is to establish a platform for clear communication. That could be a Google Doc, Google Spreadsheets, that could be Slack, it could be ClickUp, it could be whatever you all feel comfortable working with. And keep in mind, if you've got a mom or a dad that is really actively involved, they may have a little bit of a learning curve. So just consider that when you're choosing the platform that you want to make, that you're going to be communicating everything on. The delegation part is really, really important. And here's an example of a way to help delegate and take off some responsibilities that you have. I recently had a bride who is doing a destination wedding, and part of the destination experience is a boat day. So rather than the couple managing the boat day, she has assigned a captain to that experience. It doesn't mean that the bride and groom are going to be surprised by what it looks like. No, there's just going to be a captain that all questions, invitations, making sure people have paid, all the details of that day are being worked through by someone else. They own that process. They are the captain. The same can happen if you're renting a bunch of villas. Choose a captain for each house. That way you're breaking down the communication and not all these questions are coming to you. This is going to be especially true the week of the wedding when you don't want to be inundated with a bunch of questions. You're just going to be able to say, well, Mary Jo over there, she's handling all that for us. So if you have any questions, talk to Mary Jo. So those are my top 4 tips on how and when to start planning your wedding. Now, if you are a DIY couple, you're definitely going to want to check out our next video. And that is specifically going to address what you need to be doing. I'm Zach Campbell. I've planned over 350 weddings and destination events around the world. I want you to benefit from my wins, my losses, and my learnings. To make sure your wedding planning journey goes as smoothly as possible, please like, subscribe, and follow us. And don't forget to ask questions. That's what we're here for.